Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Sophie, I'm the events fundraiser at Orpheus. Hopefully you all know a little bit about Orpheus, but for those who don't, we are a specialist college for young disabled adults, and we teach independent skills using the performing arts as a tool. We're of course a charity, and every year we need to raise £1 million. I'll talk a bit more later on about one of the projects we're currently fundraising for to give you a bit of an idea about where the money you raise might go if you are to take on this amazing challenge. For now, I'd like to hand over to Lexi. Lexi is here from Different Travel, who are our tour operators for this trip, and she's going to tell you all about the challenge itself.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking about this trip. It's not only an amazing experience, but it's for such a great cause. And I hope you're all inspired to consider this for supporting Orpheus next year. So let's get straight into it. First of all, 16th to the 20th of September next year is the dates. We're going to be heading off to Greece and the adventure will begin. So it's 9 months from now, so still a little bit of a way off, but it will be here before we know it. So with that in mind, the first thing that I'm going to talk about, if I can make the slide move, yeah, here we go, is the wonderful thing of COVID-19 and how that relates to this trip. Now, obviously, at the moment, travel isn't allowed out of the UK, apart from to certain destinations, and there are various different restrictions and quarantines for returning. So essentially, with this trip, if in the hopefully the event that things go to plan and all of the restrictions are lifted, and there won't be anything to worry about in terms of travel, quarantines and things like that. If there are still concerns, whether that be because of quarantine issues, because of health risks, either in the UK or in Greece, or anything else essentially that is out of our control, such as, let's say, governmental issues or strikes and things like that, essentially we will not operate the trip. So you can rest assured that your deposit and your fundraising is safe when you're booking a place on this trip. If the trip can't go ahead because of any of those different reasons, then we will look first of all to postpone it to probably the following spring or a year later to September 2022. So you don't need to worry about that. If you can't make the new dates, if we've postponed it, or you want to cancel your place, then you'd be offered a refund of your deposit. So again, there's no risk in terms of the finances for this. Obviously, I should point out that if you did decide to drop out just because you didn't fancy going anymore, then of course your deposit would be non-refundable. But in the event that COVID-19 is a problem and affects the trip, then you're completely protected. So you don't need to worry about that. So with that official stuff out of the way, let's get into some of the fun bits, the exciting stuff. So Mount Olympus, a mountain in Greece. It's actually the highest peak in Greece, and it's an altitude of 2,918 meters. So although it's not a mega high mountain, it's a pretty big one, and I'll tell you a little bit more about kind of what it entails as we go on. Something that's very interesting about this particular peak is it's actually one of the highest in Europe by topographical prominence, because the actual base of the mountain is at sea level. So in theory, the altitude that you're gaining, the amount that you're rising is higher than some other parts of Europe, which is really interesting. Now, as you can see from the photograph in the top there, it's a very kind of jagged, unusual fan-shaped mountain, and it actually has over 46 peaks which are over 2,000 meters high, and another 47 peaks which are over 1,000 meters. So there's lots of choice in terms of the peaks that you can actually climb on the mountain itself. Now, our goal, our aim for the challenge is to summit Mytikas, which is the highest point on the mountain, so 2,918 meters. And if we can't do that, then we'll try a couple of the lower ones. I'll go into this again. There's lots of issues with weather and things on this particular mountain, so we can do some alternative options if we can't make it up to Mytikas. Now, the trip itself, it comprises of 3 days of trekking and a kind of a half day of scrambling, which is really exciting, and it's a little bit different. It adds kind of an extra element to the challenge. Me personally, it was one of my highlights of the trip, and definitely something that kind of makes the challenge really meaty and great for fundraising as well. We grade the challenge as challenging, and I will explain later on what that means in this sort of real terms and put it into context for you. Now, I'm sure you're all aware of some of the myths and legends surrounding Greece and the Greek gods and things like that. And of course, Orpheus, was himself a Greek god. Interestingly, Mount Olympus is considered to be the home of the Greek gods. So it's a really fascinating place to go to and learn a bit more about ancient Greek history. I certainly was very inspired, and when I was there, it did kind of feel almost plausible that these magical creatures could be living there on the mountain, especially with some of the crazy weather that we had when we were there. Just a quick summary of Greek history for you. The 12 gods that lived on Mount Olympus included Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Hestia, Demeter, Hermes, Aphrodite, Ares, and Hephaestus. So they're your 12 key gods that lived there, having defeated in the Battle of Titans. Now, the highest point that we're headed to, Mytikas, that's known as the Pantheon, and that's where all of the gods would meet for discussion and debates about different kind of things that were going on. And that was under the watchful eye of the god of gods throne, Zeus, which is Stephani Peak, which is just across from the summit that we're headed for. So it's a really, really stunning mountain, and there's tons of fun and history. Of course, one of the other very, very kind of topical things here for relevant to Orpheus is that one of the sections that you visit and trek through is this really beautiful plain, and it's called the area of the Muses. Now, the 9 Muses included Calliope, who was the mother of Orpheus, so it's really fitting how it kind of all comes together. Anyway, brief history of Greece over and done with. Let's have a quick chat about the itinerary. So we'll head off from London to Thessaloniki and transfer to the hotel. We'll have a welcome dinner in the town that evening with a trek briefing, learn a little bit more about what to expect, meet your guides, and get kind of really excited for the adventure to come. Now, depending on the flight time, so we won't know this until flights are booked in, I think, March of next year, we might transfer to a small village closer to the mountain. I'm not pronouncing this correctly, but we're going to call it Litachoro, and stay in a guest house overnight there. So we'll see how it fits with the flight times, but either way, we'll still stay in a nice locally owned accommodation and have dinner the night before. So once we have a good rest, we wake up the next morning and start our transportation to the trailhead, about 2 hours drive away from where we're staying, and the trek begins. You start there at an altitude of 1,100 meters, so you've already gained a fair amount of altitude by the time that you've reached there. Now, I will just quickly mention that this isn't considered a high altitude trek. High altitude tends to be considered anything around about 3,000 meters and higher, so there's a very, very small, almost non-existent chance of any kind of issues with altitude, but we still do take it very seriously, and we make sure that everyone's looked after and monitored, just in case anyone's not feeling well along the way. So yep, you can see us here, and you might recognise someone in the middle who's actually on our call with us, and that's someone else, not me. Dave is right there in the middle. He's joining us this evening. We thought we'd have a bit of a reminiscing session as well as sharing the experience with you guys. So there we are at 1,100 meters, raring to go. The weather there, it looks, we're all kind of in short sleeves and things like that. It was very, very warm. Now, at this time of year, September, in Thessaloniki, it's very, very hot. So it could be 35 degrees during the day. However, once you get onto the mountain, because you've got that elevation, the temperatures come right down and it's very, very comfortable. I think it was about 15 degrees when we started. So that's kind of the perfect weather for trekking. Really, really beautiful. So Something very interesting about this trail is it's part of the E4 walking trail. It's a 10,000 kilometer walking trail that goes all the way across Europe. Now, we won't be doing the whole thing, I promise. We won't let you get lost and wander off 10,000 kilometers away, but it is part of one of these really stunning walking trails. So it's a nice one to kind of tick off your list. Now, the trail itself, it's really stunning. It's got a variety of different environments and scenery and things like that. So you've got really beautiful thick forests of pine and beech and fir, and when it's warm, that smell of the trees and the forest is just so wonderful and really kind of feels like you're getting back into nature. And as you kind of wind your way up this sort of steep path, it zigzags its way along through these forests and up into kind of wide open spaces with these beautiful valleys left and right of you. If you can remember from that picture that I showed you at the beginning, that kind of fan-shaped summit, there are loads and loads of gorges on the mountain, and as you wind your way up, you see this beautiful scenery as you're climbing up and experience it as you go. So you can see kind of the typical type of scenery here, the typical kind of terrain. The first day of trekking is kind of, like I say, mostly through the forest. It's kind of muddy underfoot. It can be a bit slippery at times. It's fairly steep as well. This trek is certainly challenging. It's pretty much uphill all the way to the top and downhill all the way to the bottom. So it's definitely worth doing some good training for this, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. Some of the wildlife that you see is just beautiful as well. You can get some fantastic, flowers, and there's loads of beautiful butterflies, and just stopping and admiring the view like you can see this lady doing here, and just taking it all in. There's something so special about that, and you really feel like you're off the beaten track on this mountain. So as you leave the forest, it comes a lot kind of rockier and drier, as you can see here, a lot steeper, and you end up kind of coming into this sort of brand new environment. It really feels like you're heading your way up to that fan-shaped summit area. It takes about 4 hours approximately to reach the refuge that we're staying on your first night, and it's a great place to stay. I'll show you some pictures. So the accommodation throughout the trip, as I mentioned at the beginning, you'll stay in a hotel in either Thessaloniki or in the small town nearby, Plateau, and the same again at the end of the trip, you'll stay in Thessaloniki. Whilst you're on the trek itself, you'll stay in small basic mountain huts, as you can see here, dormitory style accommodation, so it's a real adventure. It's everyone in it together, you're staying there, earplugs at the ready for the snorers and kind of mucking in and having fun. It's a nice, comfortable, warm place to stay. You have your meals there, you can discuss the plans for the day ahead. It's usually a lovely burning fire there. Like I said, the temperatures on the mountain, despite the sea level temperatures being very, very warm, when you're on the mountain, it's quite cool. So it's nice to get in at the end of the day's trekking and sort of surround yourself by a lovely wood burning fire. And of course, my favorite thing to talk about is the food, of course, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail later, but of course you'll arrive, you'll have your meal served for you at the refuge, and be able to kind of have a really well-deserved carb up after your first day's trekking through this magical environment. So the first day is a short day. It's about 4 hours, like I say, to the refuge, covering about 4 miles. So you can base your, if you can imagine, it's 4 miles an hour. You kind of you're talking, it's a slow pace. You're going to be taking it really gently up that slope, making sure that you take it one step at a time and being careful on your feet. So one of the things that's really important to note, which is in keeping with the kind of the difficulty side of things, is about what you have to carry yourself. So on this particular trip, there aren't any porters. So porters aren't around to support you with your luggage. So everything that you need for the trek, you need to carry it yourself. So you'll be carrying a rucksack around about 45 to 50 litres, and it may weigh at least kind of 10 kilos once you've got your water in there. If you're good at packing light, which we will help you with and encourage you to do, then you can obviously kind of get it as light as you possibly can. You only need the essentials, and we'll explain all about that in the documentation that you're sent once you book. It's of course really important to be physically prepared for carrying all your gear. Typically, if you're a hill walker, you might carry a backpack that weighs sort of between 4 and 6 kilos. As you're out there in the hills walking with bits and pieces, essentials, water, snacks and things. But when you are walking on this kind of terrain with a kind of 10 to 12 kilo rucksack, it's a very different kettle of fish. So we definitely recommend some good training beforehand with a weighted rucksack so you can be prepared for it. Of course, anything that you don't need for the actual trek itself can be left at the hotel, so you don't need to carry your fancy evening wear and things like that you might wear on the last night, just the essentials that you need for the day. So thinking about the food, it is tea time. I hope you've all eaten. Here's a small selection of the absolutely incredible food that you'll have the opportunity to enjoy on this trek. Give me a wave if you like Greek food, or if you've tried Greek food. That's lots of waving, I like to hear that. It's absolutely stunning, isn't it? And it's just so healthy as well. Loads of really fresh ingredients and full of flavour. Lots of kind of good fats like olive oil and things like that, really beautiful. If you have any dietary requirements, if you're vegan or vegetarian or pescatarian, whatever it might be, let us know in advance and we can arrange that for you. It's not a problem at all as long as we know. Now, the actual meals that you'll be served during the trip will vary depending on the day, but typically your breakfast will be kind of big chunks of crusty bread with jam or Greek honey, with coffee or hot chocolate. Lunches tend to be kind of packed lunches, so you have a bread roll or something like that, maybe some fresh fruit, some nuts and things like that. And then your evening meal would be kind of like a pasta or a rice dish with stew, and lots of wonderful feta cheese and Greek salads as well. So you'll be spoiled in terms of the food. And I almost don't need to say it, but the restaurant food that you'll be enjoying, in your welcome and celebration meals before and after the trek are something else. I've never thought that chicken and chips could taste so good. Some of the things that you just take for granted here, absolutely stunning. You can see from the pictures. It's just simplicity. So what goes in obviously has to come out, and I think this is probably one of the biggest questions that people have is about the toilet and bathroom facilities. So during the times that you spend at the hotels, you will obviously have flushing toilets and ensuite facilities. You can see the photograph in the bottom there is a kind of typical hotel bathroom, so you've got proper sit-down loo and everything else. The picture at the top in the middle is one of the photographs of the toilet facilities in next to one of the refuges. So they have a toilet block outside of the refuge. It's very, very simple, as you can see from the pictures. It does what it needs to do. I think we kind of get the point. There aren't any showers, I'm afraid, so it's worth bringing a good sort of supply of baby wipes with you to maintain your general hygiene. Other than that, we keep it nice and simple and do the needful in the facilities provided. So let's move swiftly onwards and get back to the itinerary. So as I said, a typical breakfast, lovely, crusty, freshly baked baguette with some spreads and things to start off the day. Your day up to the summit is on day 2, so it's a big day. You've only just kind of arrived there and all of a sudden you're heading up to the summit. It's a very, very intense challenge and really, really exciting. So you head from the refuge, which is at 2,917 meters, that's where you've been staying before, to the refuge is at 2,000 meters and the summit's at 2,900, of course. And you'll follow this beautiful zigzagging path that takes you up just beneath the main summit, so that kind of fan-shaped part that I showed you at the beginning. So let me show you some of the scenery. Now, first of all, having breakfast outside at sort of 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning and watching the sunrise while you're having a cup of tea and that beautiful crusty bread and fresh honey is just magnificent. There is nothing like it. Watching the sunrise over the mountains that you're about to climb, over that amazing terrain, and just sort of seeing it unfold as you know that you've got this amazing adventure ahead of you and that you're going to be heading up to the summit. It's incredible. And there you can see the jagged peaks that I mentioned before, you know, over almost 100 peaks on the mountain itself. And of course, meeting the locals. This chap here is a resident at the Refuge, so you know, meet the friendly watchdog before you head up towards the summit as well. Now onto the terrain for the summit push. Initially, like I said, it zigzags up the mountain, and you've got this kind of rocky sort of trail that you follow. It's really, really beautiful, and it's quite nice terrain to walk on. However, as you can see from the top right hand side photograph there, you can also see that it's quite exposed and quite steep. So the actual terrain, you know, you're going to be taking it slowly, one step at a time, and just kind of focusing on getting ahead, you know, progressing along the way. You can see here as well that our guides have got ropes attached to their backpacks, and I'll tell you why that is in just a short moment. Of course, there's always opportunity for a group photograph and celebrating the views as you go up. It's just beautiful. I mean, I keep saying beautiful. I apologise for being unimaginative, but you know, the views along the way are wonderful. And you know, when you've kind of gone, you know, half the way through the day and you're tired and you need that 5-minute break for a snack and a sip of water, when you've got that kind of view around you, it's just magnificent. You can't beat it. So as you continue up, we'll have two options. So we'll be making a kind of an assessment on how things are going up to that point, mostly because of the weather. Now, Mount Olympus, as I mentioned at the beginning, is home to the Greek gods, including Zeus. Now, Zeus is the one that throws lightning around a lot. And when you're there on the mountain, you can kind of understand why the Greeks thought that Zeus lived up there. I've never ever seen a lightning storm like that before. It's quite amazing. So, of course, with safety as a top consideration, we need to make sure that it's safe for us to go up to that summit of Mytikas. If the weather isn't good, or if the group don't feel like doing it as a whole, then there's lots of other options as well. Like I said before, there are two sort of lower peaks that we can opt for, Scolio and I've forgotten the name of the other one, but it'll come back to me, that you can do instead. So yeah, there's lots of options. You'll still be able to summit one of the many peaks of Mount Olympus. So as I say, the plan is to get to Mytikas, 2,918 meters, the highest point in Greece. Now, the actual kind of ascent that you take on this day is about 800 meters of ascent. So you've got, you know, a good amount of altitude to reach, you know, to get to the summit. And it's about 4 to 5 hours of trekking so far, up to the point of reaching the base of the summit, as it were. Now, there are very narrow paths, as I've showed you before, and some of them are quite exposed. And you can see here, this is a very typical kind of scene that you'll expect on the mountain. Narrow paths and kind of big sloping sections down to the side. So it's definitely worth having a head for heights for this trek, and being adventurous and up for a challenge. You can see here that the terrain is so different to the first day of trekking. You know, you've come out of that forest and you're in this beautiful kind of rocky environment, and it just changes everything. And as the clouds kind of wind their way through this rocky pantheon, you know, it's very, very majestic and very atmospheric, super exciting. Of course, September is the middle of the summer in Europe. However, it is not unusual to see snow on the ground, so that's something else that you can look forward to. Having some interesting kind of snow slopes to cross adds to the challenge and makes it a little bit different as well. So once you've reached the base of the summit, the exciting part begins, or the next exciting part begins, and you've got a section of scrambling, and it's about 150 meters of vertical scrambling. Now you'll be roped up with your guide, which is why you saw the photographs of them with the ropes. You'll have helmets and you'll have harnesses provided for you. If you're a rock climber or you have that kind of equipment already, then you can bring it yourself. That's not a problem at all, but it will be provided if not. It is optional to do the summit of Mighty Gas, so don't worry, we're not going to force you to go up there, but it is just an amazing experience. I would strongly recommend it, if you have that kind of head for heights, that sense of adventure, and kind of a go and get it kind of attitude. So I'll give you some indication of what it's like. You can see here it's very, very rocky. It's kind of like climbing up natural rocky stairs. So you can see that you've got kind of rocky boulders with really nice footholds. Essentially, you are just kind of, I'm not sure about you, but as a kid, I would climb up my stairs at home on my hands and feet, and it's kind of a little bit like that. You just kind of get dug in and climb your way up. And like I said about the clouds, at some point the clouds come in, so you can't even see where you have to go, which really helps, especially if you're a bit kind of nervous about it. Now, looking down, that gives you another kind of impression of what to expect. So I'm looking down here at my teammate, you can see on the right hand side, and you can see the equivalent of coming up. Again, having a head for heights isn't about just going up, it's about being able to come down again, because of course you're coming down the same way that you came up, so you've got to make sure that you are able to cope with that as well. Now, it's very, very doable. It is exciting and it's a challenge, like I said, and there are ways that you can prepare for it if you're not familiar with this kind of thing. No experience is required, but it's definitely worth getting some. So for example, heading out to the Lake District for a weekend and doing a scrambling session with a guide, getting out there and kind of playing around on rocks if you have access to the coast and there's some boulders and things like that, just getting used to being kind of hands-on with the rocks and things. So after about an hour of scrambling, you reach the summit of Mount Olympus, Greece's highest point. It's absolutely amazing. You're there at 2,918 meters, and you can celebrate your achievements with your team and just feel really, really amazed at what you've achieved. It is fantastic, it's wonderful, it's different, and it's all for Orpheus, and that's what we're here to support. So, do consider that this kind of adventure is such a great opportunity to fundraise for the charity. So, as I said before, the alternative is to climb two of the lower peaks if the weather's not looking good. The altitudes of those is 2,882 and 2,911 meters. So they're definitely very substantial. So if the weather's not good, that's still an option. It's not a problem. Now, as we descend, here is that slope that you will come down that you've just scrambled up. So again, it kind of gives you an impression of what it's like to come up and come down. As you descend from that summit, you emerge onto the Plateau of the Muses, and then you walk along this beautiful kind of flat area where you reach the refuge that you're staying that evening. And again, you can see that the weather comes in very, very quickly towards the afternoon, and it's time to get moving and get settled in to your next guest house for the evening, your next refuge, just underneath the summit. They're a really, really beautiful place to stay. And again, the views that you get from here are just wonderful. Rainbows just popping out of nowhere. It's really spectacular. And from the reverse of the picture that you've seen, you get this amazing view of the actual summit itself. So it's a fantastic place to stay and kind of reflect on the amazing experience that you've had and the achievement you've made. It's also home to a very small kind of chapel, which is on top of a peak, which is just right behind the refuge itself. And if you fancied climbing up there for sunset, you get views like that. And that's something special. After having reached the highest point in Greece and then, going up this final hill and sitting there and enjoying the sunset, that's very, very special. I'll just show you a few more pictures of that. So you can see here from the bottom left-hand side picture, the views that you get all the way across Greece. You can see as far as the sea, which is absolutely amazing. And the bottom right-hand side picture, you can see there, Prophetess Ilias, I think is how you pronounce it, which is the small chapel on top of the peak. So you can go inside this amazing chapel and see kind of the history of the mountain and the religious beliefs there, for Christianity side of things. And of course, top right-hand side, celebrating your achievements. You can't go wrong with a jumping up in the air photograph. I love one of those. So after you've had fun clambering up the optional mountain at the back of the refuge, it's back to the guest house for another fantastic meal. And you can see here a very, very wonderful hearty dinner. So it's a longer day. It's about 6 to 7 hours of trekking today, possibly a little bit longer. And that is 4.2 miles. So you can see the actual distance that you've trekked is the same as the previous day, but it's taken almost twice as long to do it. So that gives you a kind of an idea of how difficult the terrain is, how steep it is, and what a challenge this really is. Now, the next day you head down from the Plateau of Muses, back down to Thessaloniki. The challenge really kind of starts and ends very, very quickly. Like I said, it's a really intense adventure. Now, if you didn't do so the previous evening, or if you wanted to go up and do it again, then we can start with that ascent to the top of the mountain there, where we can visit the monastery and the little chapel, and of course, enjoy the views of Mount Olympus. Of course, it would not be right if we didn't have a group photograph before leaving. The sun is shining. It's a really, really beautiful place for a group photograph and celebrate all of your achievements. So it's about 2 hours of descent before you reach where we're stopped for a small break at the rescue team location. So it's a descent of just over 900 meters, a descent, sorry. So it's a pretty quick descent, but the scenery as you're coming down is just as breathtaking as when you're going up. And you can see here some of the amazing pictures. Again, it's really, really adventurous scenery. You've got, as you're coming through the Plateau of the Muses, it's really beautiful and open. You can see some interesting wildlife. We saw lots of mountain goats there, which is really wonderful. You can see as far as the sea, like I mentioned before. And then as you come onto this wonderful spiny ridge of the mountain, you get that kind of little taste of scrambling again. So if you were missing it from the previous day of reaching the summit, then you've got that opportunity to kind of get a little bit hands-on again and have some of the really kind of nice spicy scenery and terrain. So it's lots of fun. From there onwards, you descend downwards back through that wonderful forest. By this point, you'll be kind of ready to your muscles will be warmed up from the morning of trekking, and you'll be just kind of soaking up the environment and enjoying a bit of descent after 2 days of ascent. Once you reach the end of the trail, you will be met by your vehicle and take a small drive to a nearby town where you'll have your lunch. Lunch is again just a wonderful meal. I won't go into too much more details. I can talk about the food all day. You'll have a wonderful lunch and then drive back to Thessaloniki, where you'll stay overnight there. Now that evening you'll head out for a celebratory dinner and have an opportunity to kind of talk about your experiences, reflect on what you've done, perhaps find out the final total of how much you've fundraised as a group. That's often a nice surprise to be left to the last day, and just kind of really soak it all in and enjoy. And that final day of trekking, it takes about 5 to 6 hours in total, covering about 6 miles. So again, it's a nice kind of a good quality trekking day, plenty of mileage under your feet. So the following day is your final day. Depending on the flight times, there might be a little bit of time in the morning for you to have a wander around Thessaloniki and see the various different sites. There is a really wonderful city, lots of very interesting things to do, perhaps do some souvenir shopping or just relax and enjoy soaking it all up. And then you'll head back to the airport and fly home to London. Now there is an option if you wanted to extend your stay and do some additional travel, perhaps in Greece, or go further afield if you wanted to. If that's something you're interested in, then just let us know and we can help you arrange that. So a few questions, a few frequently asked questions I'll just address with you. First of all, about mobile phone signal. There is mobile phone signal for a lot of the trek, but obviously some of the areas are a bit more remote, and there's no guarantee that your particular network or your phone will actually pick up signal. As far as data is concerned, obviously with Brexit coming up, as of January, the mobile phone networks may be changing the way that they deal with data. So make sure you check what the situation is with that before you use your data. Travel insurance, you have to arrange all of that yourself, making sure that you are covered for helicopter rescue and also trekking up to altitudes of 2,918 meters. Footwear will provide a full kit list for you in your book, so don't worry about that, but this is definitely one where you're going to need good quality footwear, so really nice hiking boots, not trainers. Age limit, the minimum age is 18. We can accept people that are younger, so 16 or 17, as long as they're accompanied by a parent or a guardian. There's no upper age limit. If you are, let's say, 95, 100, we're happy with that. That's not a problem. Obviously, the only issue that we have with that is that it might be more difficult for you to find travel insurance. The oldest person that we've had trekking with us to date is 86, I think. 86, yeah. He trekked with us in Nepal and did absolutely brilliantly. In fact, knocked all of the youngsters out of the water in terms of his fitness and ability. So don't worry if you are on the kind of older end of the scale, it's not a problem at all. Now, often we're asked about medical conditions. If you have a medical condition or you've got any kind of medical concerns, have a chat with your GP, find out if they think that you are medically fit to take part in the trip, and just have an open discussion with them. We might request that you have a medical form signed by your GP to kind of corroborate that, but have a chat with us if you're not sure, and we can go through that as well. Now, I've been talking through this itinerary and mentioning the word challenging. Now, what does challenging really mean? It's obviously very different for everyone. Like I said, you'll be carrying your own kit every day, so about 10 to 12 kilos of kit you'll be carrying yourself in your backpack for 3 consecutive days. The terrain is rough, it's rocky, it's steep in places. Of course, you've got that scramble up to the summit as well, so the terrain is challenging. There are some narrow and exposed areas, so you've got that kind of that feeling of being kind of in an open area. Of course, you've got the unfamiliarity of using helmets and harnesses and ropes and things, and very basic accommodation that you're staying at through the trek as well. Now, as I mentioned before, we definitely recommend that you join the trip if you are comfortable with heights. If you have a genuine phobia of heights, I would honestly say that this is probably not the trip for you, but do chat to us because we might be able to find you an alternative challenge that you can join and fundraise for Orpheus. This particular one, we would certainly recommend that if you have the opportunity, you go and do a little bit of scrambling before the trip, just to get a feel for it. It just allows you that kind of, to get the kind of first time nerves out of the way, to get an experience of what it's like, and then arrive in Greece feeling confident. Of course, apprehensive, that's absolutely normal, but just a bit more confident about what's going to happen and how it's going to feel. And like I said, there's lots of different places that you can go and do that. The Lake District, the Peak District, Scotland, Wales, all sorts of different places. And if you need recommendations for guides and things, we can help you with that as well. Now, of course, it's a very, very thrilling experience getting to Myticus. So I would say absolutely take advantage of the opportunity to do it. You can see here, it's just so exciting. And if you're looking at these pictures thinking, you know what, I could do that, and that's a tick in the box. If this inspires you, if it makes you excited and thinks, I know I want to push myself, I want to find out what my limits are, and that's a really, really great sign. So as I say, all the way through the trip, the views are absolutely stunning. So, as you are progressing through the trip, you'll have the opportunity to kind of stop, take a breath and enjoy the scenery. So even if you're feeling a bit challenged, you've got that as a backup. You can always stop and enjoy the scenery. Now, how do you train for something like this? Now, of course, hill walking is the key thing for training for a trip like this. Like I said, the terrain all the way through is pretty steep, so making sure you get out and do as much walking as you can in the hills is definitely recommended. In addition to that, building up your core strength, your leg strength, and general cardiovascular fitness is really, really helpful. So definitely recommend arriving in Greece as fit as you can be, so you can enjoy the experience as well as you can. Now, what kind of support will there be throughout the trip? So of course, Sophie and the team at Orpheus will be able to help you with the fundraising side of things. We'll talk about that in just a few moments. We will provide you with a full kit list, training documentation, discount vouchers. You can chat to me at any point. As you can probably tell, I'm very happy to talk about this trip. It's a wonderful trip. So you can bend my ear with any questions that you've got. We'll do a pre-departure meeting with your fellow teammates, and myself, one of my colleagues, will come back and chat about the specifics of the trip, go into a lot more detail. And of course, you'll be accompanied throughout the trip by experienced local mountain guides and a different travel tour manager who will make sure that everything runs smoothly throughout the experience. So that's just a kind of a snippet of the support that you'll be getting throughout the trip. So you'll never feel alone. Another thing is, if you are if there's a kind of a central place for people to meet up, it's quite nice once we're allowed to do some social get-togethers and training days and things like that, maybe join fundraising events as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can kind of build a team bond before you even get there to Greece. So another big question, what does it cost and what's included? So to book your place, there's a £315 registration fee, which is payable at the time that you book. And then with the support of the team there at Orpheus, you're asked to fundraise £2,200 for the charity. Now, there is a self-funded option available, so if you wanted to pay your own trip costs, that's not a problem. Do have a chat with Sophie, or give the team a ring or an email, and they'll be able to talk you through the options for that, talk about your individual circumstances. In terms of what's included in the trip, everything is included pretty much. The only thing that is not included is your transportation to and from the UK airport, your travel insurance, tips for the guides, any vaccinations that you might need, personal expenses like drinks, souvenirs, any kind of kit and equipment that you might need, and that's it. Everything else is included, so you don't need to worry about anything. It's nice and kind of compact adventure, and all you need to worry about is just taking it one step at a time and reaching that summit. So you may be wondering, how on earth could I possibly raise £2,200? I will hand over to Sophie, but briefly I'll just kind of show you some ideas that I've put together. So as of today, there are 200 days exactly until the fundraising deadline, which is the 24th of June next year, and that equates to £11 per day to fundraise. Now, when you break that figure down, that 2,200 down into small chunks, you can see how easy it is to actually raise that amount. For example, if you've got 10 helpful friends, perhaps they could raise £50 to £100 for you. That in itself could raise up to £1,000. Perhaps doing online quizzes, which are so popular at the moment, and charging £1 entry. If you did that once a month for 6 months, you could end up with £120. Some really fun things I've been seeing lately: sponsored head shaves. If you are a lady who does a sponsored head shave, I've seen figures well in excess of £10,000 for fundraising. So if you are brave enough to take the shave, that's definitely a good consideration. Anyhow, I will pass on to Sophie. She can tell you a little bit more about what to expect and the kind of fundraising support that Orpheus will give.
Thanks, Lexi. So we'll be there to support you with your fundraising as soon as you sign up. The first thing I'll do once you've signed up is to send you a fundraising pack, which has some great ideas to help you get started. What I'll also do is I will help you to set up an online fundraising page, and we can do this either on Just Giving, or there's a facility to do this on the Orpheus website. And then you can straight away start sharing this with your family and your friends. We can also give you a whole selection of branded items to help with your fundraising, so things like tins and buckets. And we'll of course give you a branded Orpheus t-shirt that you can wear when you're doing any of your fundraising activities. Could you move to the next slide, please, Lexi?
Sure.
So I can understand the target amount of 2,200 could seem a bit overwhelming, but we do have loads of ideas we can share with you. Lexi has already touched on a few great ideas. I am really hopeful that things will start slowly going back to normal, and hopefully you'll be able to resume some of the more kind of normal face-to-face fundraising activities. These might include things like bag packing, bucket collections in supermarkets, quiz nights at your local pub, bake sales, etc. But if not, there are loads of virtual fundraising activities that you could get started with immediately. Things like virtual wine tastings are really popular at the moment. Pub quizzes, if you've not already done too many this year, like I have. If you're like me and you're a bit zoomed out, you could get your whole family and your friends to have a huge clear out and sell your unwanted goods on eBay. There are loads of other platforms where you can sell CDs and DVDs and books for cash. Obviously, Christmas is right around the corner. If you were to sign up now, you could just about possibly have a Christmas amnesty and ask for donations instead of presents. As I say, we have loads of ideas that you could get started with immediately and that fit in with the current restrictions. And I'm absolutely happy to talk to anyone who signs up on a one-to-one basis to discuss all your options. Another thing that Lexi mentioned that we're really keen to do is to organise some training walks in the lead up to the trek, so you can all get to know each other a bit better and get used to walking as a group. Hopefully we can do some socials as well. And if there is enough interest within the group, we can definitely look at the possibility of going to get some scrambling experience as the team somewhere in the UK before the trek. If you can move to the next slide, please. So by taking on this challenge, you'll raise funds that will make a huge difference to the lives of our students. And I wanted to talk very briefly about one project that we're currently fundraising for, so you can get a bit of an idea about where your money might go if you were to take on this challenge. So the photos up here are of our Apollo group, and we are currently raising funds to create a unique sensory space for our Apollo group to learn in. For those of you who don't know, Apollo are a group of students who have difficulties in communicating and who can find it quite hard to express their thoughts and feelings. And what we want to do is to create a calm and nurturing environment for them to learn in. Currently, our classrooms at Orpheus can feel quite noisy and busy, which can be quite overwhelming for some of the students in this group. And the space we want to create will have sensory plants and wind chimes and soft lighting, and it will create a much better learning space for these students. Our Apollo staff members are absolutely amazing, and they already do a really fantastic job with this group of students. And I just wanted to share a really short case study with you about the progress of one of our students in this group. So this is Bartholomew. He is in our Apollo group. Bartholomew understands what is being said to him, but he can find it quite hard to communicate his thoughts and feelings through words. But during his time at Orpheus, he's grown in confidence. He's been using Makaton signing and an iPad to communicate with his peers. And much to our delight, a couple of weeks ago, Bartholomew started a conversation using his iPad with a member of staff completely independently, which is something he's not done before. This might seem like quite a simple thing, but this is a huge, huge achievement. And it's something that some people might not have thought was possible just a few months ago. And you can see a quote on the screen at the moment from his mum when she was told about this, which I think is just so, so lovely. I think I'm handing back over to Lexi now to carry on.
Absolutely, yeah. Gosh, I'm aware of Orpheus and the amazing work you do, but that's fascinating listening to that, and the project that you're funding for, it sounds incredible. So I really hope that this trek is successful for you and you raise loads of money. So if if you are inspired, if you do want to support the charity by taking part in this fundraising event, how do you book? So if you head over to the Orpheus website, there's an online registration form that you can fill in there. You can see the page there on the screen. Once you've completed the form, that will come through to me, and then I will send you an invoice with details of how to pay your £315 registration fee. Once that's all paid and done, then we'll send over all of your confirmation documents, your trip information, discount vouchers, kit lists and everything, so you can be fully prepared and ready to go. And Sophie will be in touch to help you plan your fundraising events for the coming period of time. We really, really hope that we can welcome you to the team soon. We are hoping that people will book by the end of January. That way we can have the team complete, ready for when the flights are released in early February or early March. So do consider taking part. Like Sophie mentioned, the earlier you book, the longer you've got for the fundraising, and you can take advantage of all of the opportunities that Christmas offers with fundraising. So with that, thank you very much to everybody for joining us, and please, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or give me a wave, and we can answer any questions that you have.
Hi.
Hello, Philippa, how are you?
Hello. Hello. First of all, apologies for being so late.
That's fine.
I had another call which overran. That is genuinely my pathetic excuse.
Not a problem at all.
anyway, I'm sure I see you're recording it. Is that right?
That's right, yes. So we can send you the presentation. You can catch up.
I can catch up. But thank you very much. It's really interesting. And I will talk to my husband about it, and we'll let you know what we want to do. But thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you very much, Lexi and Sophie. Fascinating. It's a trip I'd love to do. I'm not entirely sure, however, that this isn't maybe just a step too far, but I'm going to give this some thought. We did Kilimanjaro 15 years ago. In some ways, this looks more technical than Kilimanjaro.
Which route did you do on Kilimanjaro? Do you remember?
All I can tell you, it's 15 years ago. All I can tell you is that we started off. It was all in Tanzania. We started off in at about 1,500 meters, and made our way, I think, gently around the east side and up to the top. But I'm afraid I'd have to go back. I've still got the documentation. I'd have to go back. But
the only reason I ask is that there's a section on Kilimanjaro where there is some scrambling.
The last bit up to the summit is definitely scrambling material.
Yes, absolutely. So if you've done that, then I would say that this is slightly more exposed. But if you've got that kind of experience under your belt, then doing a bit of a refresher, since it was 15 years ago, like you say, I think you probably would be able to manage it. But it's certainly worth going out there and giving it a go with some scrambling beforehand, and see how you feel. But I think you could do it if you've done Kilimanjaro.
You are very encouraging.
I've done Kilimanjaro a number of times, and I've done this trip last a couple of years ago, so I've got a direct comparison. And yeah, I would say in terms of kind of the difficulty and intensity, Kilimanjaro is overall more difficult, but like you say, this one is slightly more technical in that you've of course got that, that very steep scrambling section, quite exposed. But yeah, on our grading level, Kilimanjaro is graded slightly more challenging than this one. Dave, you joined me on the trip 2 years ago. I'm going to throw you in the deep end here and ask if you have anything to add that I missed from the presentation, or any comments about the experience.
Okay, well, firstly, just to answer Mike's query, he was a bit worried about the technical side. Until this trip, I'd never done anything that technical, and I didn't find it that difficult. There was a couple of bits. It was challenging. Coming down is definitely worse than going up. But I think you all know that if you've done any sort of climbing. But no, it was definitely doable. We did have a couple of girls who'd not done any of that before, and they managed it as well. The second thing I'd say is that Greece is an absolutely beautiful country, and if you think of Greece as just beaches and sort of hot weather, when you get up into the mountains, it's a completely different thing altogether. People very, very friendly, lovely, lovely scenery. Scenery was absolutely amazing. And as Lexi's mentioned, the food. We've all had Greek food in this country, and you cannot compare it to proper cooking in Greece itself. Even their coastal resorts don't compare at all to once you get inland. It's a different aspect altogether. And I just thought it was fantastic. If anyone who's thinking of going, I'd say go, because it's superb, and you'll never regret it. So.
Thank you.
Well, just want to say a really big thank you. I found out about this actually through my nan when I went to visit her before everything went into lockdown. And if I'm being honest, I was a bit like, oh, I don't really know if I'm going to do it, but now I'm quite determined. So thank you so much for first of all persuading me, and also these pictures look beautiful. Like, they're absolutely
photogenic, isn't it?
I was completely blown away. Yeah, so if anything, I'm more determined than ever to give it a go.
Fantastic.
I have to do quite a bit of training, I think. I do not do hill walking at all, and I have never scrambled or done any rock climbing. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm going to give it a go.
That's fantastic. We've got loads of time as well still before September, so plenty of time to start your hill training.
Yeah.
Definitely. And you know, it's one of those things as well. Personally, some of the enjoyment of a challenge like this is actually the training. So getting out there, and if you've never done hill walking before, I'm kind of almost jealous because you now have the whole of the UK to explore for the first time, and there's just nothing like it. It's so wonderful. So you've got an amazing opportunity to get out there and see some really beautiful parts of our country. So yeah, I'm so excited for you that you get the opportunity to do that, really. Cool. Alrighty, well, unless there's any other questions, I think we'll end the call here. And if you do think of anything afterwards, there's always something, then don't hesitate to contact Sophie. The email address is fundraising@orpheus.org.uk. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll just pop it in the chat now if that helps.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, feel free to send across an email. She'll be happy to help you with that. And yeah, if you've got any kind of other things that crop up or you're interested in booking, then go ahead and visit the website and you'll find lots of information there and the booking form. So yeah, thanks again for everybody joining us, and we hope to see you in Greece in 9 months' time.
Thank you so much, Lexi.
Thank you, Lexi.
Okay.
Thank you, Sophie.
Bye.
Bye.